Ladies and gentlemen, it is I, your host, Animarchy History, with a supercut meme-filled extravaganza from the absolute debacle that was this debate. And so we need to frame it appropriately. In the red corner, weighing 350 pounds, pretty useless, has a crappy, poor excuse for a beard, and world-renowned Vatnik-in-chief, Gonzalo Lira. And in the blue corner, weighing in at a whopping 1.3 tons, and it all being magnificently fabulous, slathered in mud and completely catatonic with alcohol poisoning, is the true Scotsman of the no true Scotsman fallacy, LazerPig!
So I figure, it'd be interesting to have a discussion with my two guests to figure out if they are ignorant or not.
I want to ask you a question. I'd rather take objection to you calling me pro-NATO. I've never ever stated that I'm pro-NATO. I don't think I've ever mentioned that I'm pro-NATO. I don't think I've ever stated it anywhere that I'm pro-NATO. I'm not pro-NATO. I am pro-Ukraine.
So you're pro-Zelensky regime?
I'm pro-Ukraine, and I'm pro...
No. I said specifically pro-Zelensky regime or anti-Zelensky regime?
I'm pro-Zelensky regime.
Then you're pro-NATO.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Well, let's say, for the moment, let's play devil's advocate here.
Yes or no? The Kiev regime was doing
here.
nothing to provoke Putin into invading Ukraine. Yes or no? It's simple, LazerPig. Answer the question.
Are you going to let me talk, or are you going to scream at me like a child?
I'm asking you a straightforward question. It's simple. Yes
no,
or no?
I'm sorry. You invited me here under the premise that I would have my chance to speak, and you would not interrupt me, and this would be a civilized discussion.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? I'm going to speak, and you're not going to interrupt me, are you? Exactly how does their death, how does the targeting of civilians, wholesale slaughter of civilians...
That's a lie.
Justify...
They have not been targeted. They have not been targeted
specifically. How does that
I'm here in the country
justify
to know that
what
is
Putin
not
is doing?
accurate. That is a lie.
Are we allowed to just go out and murder civilians because, oh no, Putin's feelings, everybody. He's a bit intimidated by NATO. Oh no.
Shut up, Gam.
You shut up! You shut up! I'm so fucking scared right now. You shut up!
Lira, am I allowed to go outside with a shotgun and start killing Christians because I'm a bit threatened by the Westboro Baptist Church?
Mashallah, brother!
Okay, so this isn't an actual conversation on any of these matters. This is just kind of like...
This is me
reach out and
trying
kind of
to
preach.
find out if NATO supporters, such as both of you, are ignorant or evil.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right, okay.
Um,
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
Define evil.
The opposite of the good.
Define good.
The opposite of evil.
Okay. I'm not really sure where to go with that. It is the way it is because it is the way it is, and I say it the way it is, Therefore, I define evil as a duck because a duck is evil.
Okay. Did Kiev regime
because ducks reproduce by fucking raping each other. Therefore, that is evil. Therefore, evil is ducks. I'm not a duck. Therefore, I'm not evil. I have.
These are internet blood sports rules, Destiny. The guy who rage quits is the guy who loses.
Okay. The thing is, it looks like I'm the loser here. I think stepping into this call made me a loser. So. I'm sorry, my dude. Good luck. Don't get killed.
It just shows that you are basically all about destroying Ukraine.
I think the bargain your Pinot Noir for this one. I think. Look, I don't believe I can convince you to change your mind. Nor I think
I'm not
you to
interested
change
in
your
being convinced.
I
want
think
to hear
the
your
same
position.
applies to a respectable audience here. So I'm going to be with you. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm not here to
Okay,
lecture.
so
I'm here
you can't
completely
disprove
out of
anything that I'm
morbid
saying.
curiosity.
Is that what you're
I'm
saying?
genuinely curious what you have to ask me, and I have some questions of my own. But
Go
I do
ahead.
have other things I need to do tonight. I'm not going to sit here all night. I was expecting to be here for maybe an hour and a half, potentially, and then I was going to let you and Destiny do your wonderful
Destiny
thing.
chickened out. You know, he rage quit like a little bitch.
Well, Destiny has left, and to be honest, I don't blame him. You're not acting civil.
I am acting civil, but I'm calling out liars when I hear lies.
These are lines from Russian propaganda. These are lines from the 5,000.
This is the truth. This is the truth. And you claiming that it's Russian propaganda doesn't change the fact that it's true.
Archaeology is the search for fact, not truth. If it's truth you're interested in, Dr. Tyree's philosophy class is right down the hall.
But it is Russian propaganda.
So what? The Russians can say that the sky is blue. Is that Russian propaganda? Or are you going to ask me to define what is blue?
Do you not understand what propaganda is?
Yes, I know exactly what propaganda is. Do you know what is true and what is false?
You know what? You know what? You know what?
The station at Yavoriv
Honey, please.
Don't call me honey, piggy.
Please.
Piggy?
I believe that
Tesco
should give me free wine. I believe that Tesco should give me free wine. But they don't.
Revolution Radio, operational control.
It's not up to NATO if or not Ukraine joins. It's up to Ukraine. And Zelensky made it very clear when he started.
So it's okay if there are nuclear weapons in Cuba threatening the United States? I mean, if Cuba decides to join the Chinese military alliance and install nuclear weapons on Cuban soil aimed at the United States, that should be no problem whatsoever, right?
What has that got to do with anything?
Because the Zelensky regime was saying in January of 2022 that it would be a great idea for NATO to put nuclear weapons in Ukraine. And none of the other leaders at the Munich conference disputed him. They were basically tacitly agreeing that it was a good idea.
Has any two nuclear, since the end of the Second World War, has any two nuclear nations gone to war?
They came close in '62 in Cuba.
They very much did, yes.
Why?
But did they?
Why?
But did they? They did not.
Why did they almost go to war? We all know the answer to the question of did they go to war or not. They obviously didn't. Why did they almost go to war? That's the salient question. You're avoiding the salient question because you know the answer, and the answer is something that you don't want to face. So I'm asking. I don't
want to face the idea that in response to NATO moving nukes closer to Russia, Russia moved nukes closer to America in Cuba, and that caused tensions to rise between.
It almost caused a nuclear war, didn't it?
It almost did, but it did not.
Yeah, that's not the point. It could have.
Hi, Pac-Man jumping in here for a quick interim. I just want to point out that this argument has one major hole in it, and it's a really big one, at least from my perspective. As someone who is supposedly knowledgeable about military affairs, I'm surprised Mr. Lira didn't pick up on it. The United States, or NATO for that matter, does not need to put nuclear weapons in Ukraine. As mentioned, we've already got Estonia, Latvia, and everything, which are actually closer to the targets we want to hit, especially seeing as they have to go into a ballistic arc covering the curvature of the Earth, etc., and it's easier for them to launch from there anyway. But even despite that, there's one big thing here. The United States, France, and Britain all maintain a significant portion of their modern nuclear deterrent via submarine-launched ballistic missiles, which have sufficient technology, especially with the new classes coming online in the United States Navy, have quieting technology and sneaky features, for lack of a better term, that would render them very hard to detect to Russian coastal defenses, which means they can get a hell of a lot closer than Kyiv. And why the hell would they risk putting fixed emplacements in Ukraine for Russia to attack, because the Russians would be well within range from both Belarus and their own borders to hit their nuclear deterrent, when they can just maintain their nuclear deterrent via their submarine force or their stealth bomber and fighter fleets based throughout Europe. It's not the 60s anymore. We're not dealing with poorly designed, low-efficiency ICBMs that take 6 hours to fuel and, have to be put on a ready... No, these submarines can park themselves right off the Russian coastline and smack Moscow with less than 5 minutes warning. Why would we need to put nukes in Ukraine? The only reason we'd put anything there is ground troops, and it would be to deter a Russian invasion, which obviously seems to be a fucking pattern.
There is a difference between a statement of fact and an opinion. There are no opinions here. These are all factually accurate.
They're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving, Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point...
I would disagree, but let's agree to disagree.
You would disagree, okay?
Does that make me ignorant or evil?
So let's... It makes you not ignorant. And there are two only
so there's a third option.
You figure it out.
Are you scared of me?
I found that very amusing.
Are you scared of me?
Not really.
You're acting like it.
Scared Potter.
Okay, so you think it is reasonable to prevent an ethnic cleansing of an entire people from a region that is adjacent to yours. That's what NATO did in Serbia. And so that's what the Russians are doing insofar as Ukraine is concerned, among other things.
That is why I support Ukraine. I go back to your other points.
You support Ukraine even though
right-wing
ethnic
cabal.
Russians who are Ukrainian are openly targeted for extermination?
The Azov region was founded by ethnic Russians. Their tactics are awful. They've got no coordination. They look absolutely nothing like a NATO unit. They look like a rabble. They look like a militia. And that's exactly how they act. Because, let's be honest,
we're talking about those
they're not NATO funded.
You
need them to be NATO funded because it fits your narrative. But we both know...
They are NATO funded and trained.
Don't raise your voice at me, young man.
Oh, what are you going to do? Squeal some more?
Yeah, I'm a pig. Oink, bitch.
Victoria Nuland is the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs in the United States. And she admitted to Western biological weapons facilities in Ukraine because she was afraid that the Russians would find them and potentially use the material that they had accumulated in these biological weapons facilities.
Marco Rubio, really?
In congressional testimony, it's not Marco Rubio, who is a neocon in favor of this war, but rather Victoria Nuland, who is supervising the whole Ukraine situation for the State Department. She admitted it in congressional testimony.
Right. So what happened, as far as I'm aware, is that they found a hospital. They took some pictures of it and said, this is a biolab.
They found 26 separate installations in Ukraine.
And was any weapons found there?
Well, no, because they're secret.
Okay, they're secret, they're mysterious. So again, we devolved into big government conspiracy. Zelensky can magically move missiles from a biofacility. It's a biofacility, everyone. Trust me, it's not a hospital lab.
And you're saying that there were no biological weapons facilities in Ukraine. Is that true? Is that what you're saying?
There's no weapons. No weapons have been found.
They were there and they were found by the Russians.
Weapons may have been found. They found a hobby drone. They found a hobby drone with a basket on it and said, "Yes, aha, biological weapon." That's as much evidence as we've seen.
Victoria Nuland admitted to the fact of these biological weapons facilities in Ukraine in sworn congressional testimony.
Hi, me again. Just popping back in. I assume, though it's bold of me to assume, that Mr. Gonzalo here is aware that every major medical institution in the world just about, as well as every major university, has a lab of some kind which is used to test pathogens and understand and research pathogens, and that every good country fosters a strong department of health that investigates deadly pathogens. And perhaps, maybe, a country in partnership with NATO has laboratories in place which are used to study such weapons, that being anthrax, weaponized bubonic plague, flu, etc., because their neighboring country was a former world superpower with a very well-known, very pervasive biological and chemical weapons program. And perhaps this country, under threat of invasion, which is now currently taking place, would be researching countermeasures to those pathogens. In fact, the only known NATO location for biological weapons labs, as far as I'm aware, is USAM RID at Fort Detrick, which is the home of US biological warfare research. They say they don't do it anymore, but look, I don't buy that for a second. If there's a way to weaponize a pathogen, I'm pretty sure the United States government is working on it. Be that as it may, why would they put their biological weapons program in a country under threat of invasion? However, it's very easy to see why a country under threat of invasion from a nation which does currently have anthrax and nerve gas in its arsenal would be somehow looking into things to stop those kinds of weapons. I don't know, whatever. I'm sure I'm just talking shit.
So how does that square with you saying that there were no biological weapons at all?
How many slides do you have here?
I have 10.
You have 10. Move on, please.
We're on number 4. No, we're going to move on when you have answered the question.
All right, give me a second. This isn't really a fair debate, is it? I mean, you're dictating our opinions,
and I
no,
what
you're
is
not being
true
fair
about
here.
this conflict.
You're dictating what our opinions are, and every time we refute it, you're not giving us a chance to speak, and you're just saying, "Aha, you're false. You're full of lies. You're
false.
You're evil."
I said specific issues, and you have denied them, even though there's available evidence. And laughing hysterically and rather nervously, I might add, isn't going to change.
That's not me laughing hysterically. Laughing is me going, it's just my normal fucking laugh because I'm a weird sideshow freak. Laughing hysterically, we'd be going, they never said I could teach a llama to drive. Well, they were wrong, the fools. That's laughing hysterically.
Look what I can do.
What? What does that have to do with anything?
No. He's got a point.
Why are you going back to Destiny?
Because it's amusing to me. Just as
I saw the podcast that you two were on back when you were Coach Red Pill. Are you still Coach Red Pill?
What's it say in my log line below?
Okay. Well, I saw the podcast where you two together. I will honestly admit, I have never seen two men in the throes of passion down each other's throats more than the last time I was at the Las Vegas
trying to insinuate like homosexuality between myself and Destiny. It's kind of trivial, you know.
No,
so
but
it doesn't
it's
really get a rise out of it.
comparable to that.
Okay. Next,
it was...
the conflict in Ukraine is in fact a proxy war between the United States and NATO against Russia. The goal of the United States and NATO is regime change in Russia and the physical breakup of the Russian Federation into several smaller countries. That is the destruction of the Russian nation. Are either of these statements true or false?
I have no idea.
You know.
I have absolutely no idea.
That's how you're going to play it? That you're a babe in the woods and know nothing?
Yeah.
So why are you commenting on the Ukrainian war?
You're framing the whole thing as ignorant or evil. So regardless of what, unless I agree with you at every point, in which case this would be a very boring discussion.
No, because I have some false ones too.
You've thrown in random false ones to trick me.
That's the kind of guy I am. What can I say?
Oh, you're a sneaky boy, aren't you?
I'm a sly one.
Sly boy. I used to be a voice actor. Yeah, I have no idea.
The United States and NATO, directly as well as through their Zelensky regime proxies, are winning this war against Russia. True or false?
Ooh. Is this one of the sneaky ones?
I'd be giving the game away if I said either way.
Because I happen to know that you disagree with this, don't you? You smoke a lot, Jesus.
Unfortunately, it's stress. I hadn't been smoking for 20 years. Not kidding, or not quite. I quit smoking when I was, 20 years. I quit smoking when I was 33. I picked up cigars, and you don't inhale. And so I sort of like weaned myself off cigarettes. But, because of this conflict, quite frankly, started smoking again. What can I say? I'm up to 2 packs a day.
So what kind of tree would you be?
I don't know. I don't know enough about trees to be able to give an intelligent opinion. So is this statement true or false?
Well, you happen to know that you happen to believe that it's false.
What do you believe?
Well, what I'll say is that Ukraine has managed to retake 70% of the land.
Is it true that you live in your mother's basement? That's what the chat is saying.
My mother doesn't have a basement.
Well, or in a room in your mother's house.
Let me check. Mother! No answer. Amazing. Could it potentially be that
maybe she's deaf? Turn on her hearing aid.
Mother, I require your assistance. Come here at once. I'm out of Cheetos. No answer. It's amazing. It could be that I'm in a house entirely by myself. My mother doesn't have a basement. She lives in a completely different country. But if she did have a basement, that'd be fucking great. I would move in there in a heartbeat because she lives in fucking Spain, and Spain is a gorgeous country. I pay less tax. I'd have access to better food.
The United States is, in your estimation, winning this war against Russia. Is that your estimation?
Well, I mean, Ukraine has retaken 70% of the land that Russia took in its initial invasion. Russia has not really progressed beyond that. So a lot of people would see that as a victory for Ukraine. And a lot of people would see that, in fact, Russia is winning because they currently have managed to take about half of an old salt mining town just north of Bakhmut. I'm probably butchering the name of that city or town. And right now they own between just outside the winery down to the scrapyard. So I mean, it's entirely.
So answer the question: is the U.S. and NATO winning the war against Russia? Are they winning the war in Russia?
Ukraine calculates their victories in square miles. Russia calculates its victories in street names and house numbers.
No, Russia calculates its victories by way of the number of enemy killed or incapacitated, because this is a war of attrition. I'll get to that slide in just a minute, but I want you to answer this question first. Is the United States and NATO winning this war against Russia? Yes or no?
I have answered it. I think I have.
Please, then say so, please, for the audience.
Because you want a yes or no answer. I can't see your chat.
You can see my chat. It's public.
No, I don't want to look at it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different story.
I don't want to look at a chat where everyone's calling me a man-child. Because that's the best argument they can come up with, because they've never had to insult someone since 5th grade. I'm a professor. I'm a Scotsman. You can't intimidate me with such weak-ass arguments. Come at me with something stronger.
Sure. Economically, the United States and NATO are losing the war against Russia because...
Are you serious?
I'm being told by my own chat to calm down because apparently the sexual tension between us is getting through the roof.
Why do you keep bringing up the sex thing? Is that the only thing that you have, or is that a crutch that you use when you know that you're losing the argument?
No, it's something that my chat is doing. I thought I'd mention that. Just let's calm down and be adults. Let's turn my voice down.
So let's be adults, and let's be very soft and gentle as you answer these questions. Is any of these points, are any of these points true or false?
I would say that these points cannot be justified as a true or false answer because they're not true or false answers.
Yes, they are true or false.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Oh,
10%. This is true. Every economist, reputable economist, can say that this is true.
And there it is, every reputable economist. So basically, the economists who agree with your position are the ones who are speaking the truth.
There are a lot of
All the
economists
ones
that
who
I
have
don't agree with. I
pointed
don't
out that
agree with
Germany's
the
economy is
IMF.
doing
I don't
fine,
agree with the World Bank. I
that
do
it now
agree with
is
Goldman Sachs.
completely
I do
not
agree with
dependent on Russian
Morgan
gas.
Stanley's analysis. So the reputable economists are those who are in the mainstream, those who are in fact pro-US and pro-NATO. Your side, they admit that this is the kind of contraction that the European economies are going to be suffering.
Hi guys, me again. Just wanting to point out that GDP is not a really good indicator of financial health of a nation for a couple of reasons, but mainly it doesn't show the purchasing power of the average person. The United States is the richest economy in the world by far. It has the most billionaires, it has the most big businesses, it is an economic powerhouse. Yet a good chunk of the population is either below the poverty line or living paycheck to paycheck, and the ones that aren't are at severe financial risk if anything goes wrong in their lives. If they have a sudden injury, if they lose their job, if the market fluctuates particularly badly, boom, it's all gone. Now, in Russia, things are just as bad, if not worse. Corporations have been pulling out everywhere. Sanctions have been kicking in. You say they don't hurt, but looking at how much money the ruble is buying, plus all of the corporations that have pulled out, the lack of employment, the lack of money flowing around in your economy, all of this is a problem. But I'll leave that to Economics Explained and Perrin to handle because, you know, I'm not an economist. I'm a historian like LazerPig. But I can simply sum it up in this. If you want to have a good idea of how your economy is doing, I used to work at McDonald's, and LazerPig here used to work at Burger King. I'm just going to say this. If you live in a country, or if you're a country that has to nationalize McDonald's, I think you fucked up. Like, genuinely, you have fucked up. Like, honest to God. If you look at their fry boxes, like, they're blank. They're completely blank because A, they can't have any branding on them, and B, they can't afford the ink to print designs and logos. They can't get the ink required to do it. Bruh.
And it hasn't happened yet.
It has happened. There are.
I mean, according to these same economists, Germany should have collapsed 4 times by now over the past 8 years, and it's doing fine.
No, it's not. I know people in Germany.
I also know people in Germany.
I know people in the United Kingdom who tell me that there are no eggs and no poultry. There were no eggs and poultry for Christmas season. There were no geese. There were no chickens.
No, it depends what region you're in. I was fine. Yeah, there was a blockade on not a blockade. There was rationing on eggs, but you know why that is?
There was rationing on eggs. Okay.
Yeah, butter went up to like $7 a pack. Do you know why that is?
Mm-hmm. Tell me.
Brexit.
Oh, Brexit. Brexit happened.
Yeah.
When did it happen? 2016, if memory serves.
Yeah,
okay, sure.
Yeah.
The Russian economy is suffering minimal damage and with moderate inflation and only 2.7% GDP contraction. True or false?
Russia is currently in more debt than it's ever been outside of
It's
COVID.
2% of its gross domestic product, which is inconsequential insofar as its foreign currency reserves and its current balance of trade.
5 trillion rubles in debt. That is trillion with a capital T.
The United States is, well, okay. Are the following statements true or false? Russia is experiencing moderate inflation and only 2.7% GDP contraction. True or false?
That is that is so false. It could actually be summarized as bullshit.
True. It's true. By the IMF has stated that this is true. These are IMF figures. International Monetary Fund, a Western organization, a US-backed organization.
So
it's their figures.
When we spoke about Britain a little bit earlier, I mentioned that butter.
I'm not interested in Britain. I'm interested in the current situation in Ukraine and Russia. Please answer the question, or if you are unwilling to answer the question, I'll go to the next slide.
How expensive is food in Moscow right now?
That's not the issue.
How expensive is the price of a car?
So you don't want to answer the question. Okay.
Economies are rising all the time. The GDP is always rising.
Diplomatically,
That's
the United States and NATO are losing the war against
is
Russia.
based on what people can actually afford. A country will have a GDP value that will go up and up and up and up and up until suddenly it doesn't, and then a collapse happens. That's how economy works.
Of your points.
What? What the fuck?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're not allowed to have talking in a debate.
Do you think I'd be a credible historian if I said it's true because I say it is?
We're not.
The T-34 is the worst tank ever made by human hands. I say so. There it is.
We're basically a couple of YouTubers shooting the shit, and I have specific questions that I'm posing to you. Now, if you're unwilling to answer them, okay.
Right.
You can quit whenever you want to. I'm not holding a gun to your head.
That's what you want, though, isn't it? You want me to quit. You want me to quit so then you can have the moral high ground and go, oh, look, he ran away. He can't answer questions. How pathetic, how sad.
But you're not answering the questions. So to everybody who's going to listen to this broadcast, they're going to say the same thing. The guy didn't answer the questions. I'm putting straightforward, very clear.
Why am I not answering the questions?
Because you know the answers.
Because it's a black and white fallacy.
You don't want to face those answers.
It's a true or false, and if I say false, you go, but, and then you start going, and if I try to talk over you, suddenly everything I have to say is irrelevant.
When you start talking about the British economy and not the EU, because you yourself said of Brexit that it's no longer part of the European Union, so therefore I'm talking about the Eurozone, and you start talking about Britain, I know.
And what was the point I was trying to make?
You probably didn't have any point, and you were trying to improvise until you lit on some issue that might get a rise out of me.
No. The point I was trying to... Let's go back to that, and let's talk briefly for a little moment. The point I was trying to make is you did get a rise out of me telling you about the eggs and telling you about the bottom, the price of that, and I saw your little eyes light up. And then I was going to bring that back to the point of how expensive
did my eyes light up behind my glasses?
Food
I'm looking at myself,
Moscow.
and there's like all
You're
kinds
interrupting me again.
Oh, okay, sorry.
How expensive is food in Moscow?
Is there food in Moscow?
Is there food in Moscow? Wow.
Because there isn't in Great Britain. Yeah, because there is in Russia, but there isn't in the UK.
There's no food in the UK. Christ, how am I so fat then if there's no food anywhere?
I don't know. You're going to have to go on a forced diet. Break out the leather shoes and start, boiling them or something. Oh, wait, you're not going to have the energy to boil them. My mistake.
So Britain doesn't have food.
Because, I see all these pro-Western videos of Russians and Americans and Brits living in Russia. And they show supermarkets, and they seem pretty well stocked to me. Certainly better than here in Kharkov. Certainly better than UK or the Netherlands.
Yeah, I'm sure if you look at a picture of a supermarket, you can see, yes, there's plenty of pasta sauce. But pasta sauce was not one of the things I listed. I said buckwheat and sugar and salt.
Okay.
Do you have pictures where they have
moving on to the diplomatic front.
Okay. So now I've given you an answer to a question that you don't like. Now we're moving on.
No, because you're just pulling bullshit out of your ass, and you and I both know it. It's a waste of time to argue with such a thing. See, I make a point, it's bullshit. Well, it is bullshit because we're talking about. I asked you a specific question: whether in Russia
does that make me ignorant or evil?
That makes you evil.
Right.
Look, you're an evil guy. I saw your video, your previous videos. Okay.
Which ones?
I can be civil with a pig, but I know what I'm dealing with. Okay?
You have absolutely no idea what you're dealing with here.
The whole point of this exercise is to show people who you really are.
I have absolutely no interest.
Dishonest, lying, and willing to harm other people for his ego and for his feeling of belonging to the Western regimes that are committing a genocide here in Ukraine. This war would have been over long ago had it not been for your prime minister, your propaganda that scuttled the deal in April that would have been a ceasefire. That's why the Russians withdrew, because of the negotiations that were going on in Istanbul.
Simmons, you're supposed to negotiate their surrender, not ours.
Hey, Blues! Blue! We're only gonna give you one chance to surrender! What? Why would I... Hey, hold on a second, Sheila. Why would I surrender? How many sandwiches? Because you're outnumbered. Bullshit, dude, I got a tank! People with tanks are never outnumbered. We also think that it's your turn to surrender. What?
And then Boris Johnson flew into Zelensky and then told him in no uncertain terms that he could not sign any kind of peace agreement. So everything that has happened since early April until today, all the senseless deaths of all the young men in Ukraine, it's because of people like you who knew the facts and just said, yeah, march on, keep on fighting. Yeah, Ukraine, I stand with Ukraine. And have all the Ukrainian young men, the flower of this country, be killed in a senseless war. You know, you always knew. And you're just an evil fuck who is happy to see the destruction of the Ukrainian nation and the Ukrainian people.
Crocodile tears you shed for Ukraine. And how tragic it is that the Zelensky regime is marching soldiers to their death, but not a thought spared for all the Russians who have died. And for what? I have personally spoken to people who have fled Mariupol, both prior and while under Russian rule. I've also had the opportunity to speak to some of the families of Syrian volunteers who were promised home. Bring your families, bring your children to Putin's new Russia if you come and fight for him. And they talk of the debris. They talk of the lack of services. They talk of the lack of facilities and the fact that they cannot go outside at night because the streets are owned by wild animals, by dogs, by wolves who dig through the rubble to feast.
What are you talking about? You're just randomly spewing out words because you know that everything I previously said is true.
By the Russian army.
You knew about the destruction of Ukraine beforehand,
dogs running around the
what
street,
you encourage with your propaganda and your lies
that is life under
the destruction of the Ukrainian nation.
I want to hear it from your mouth.
You want the destruction of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian nation because you are fundamentally a nihilist.
Why you think this is acceptable for Russia?
Do you want a shit show? Am I delivering? Chat, hit me with a +1 if I am delivering a shit show for you. I have entertaining guests, interesting guests who have a lot to say and who are very insightful. You're not one of them.
You have guests who agree with you on every point, and then you don't need to say anything. You just move them from topic to topic, and then they discuss why everything that you've said is correct.
No, lots of times I've had a lot of disagreements with my guests on a lot of different issues, and it's been extremely stimulating. I have had hardcore leftists, and everybody knows that I'm a conservative, and it's been really interesting to talk to them.
Okay, but not to me.
No, because you're not saying anything that is particularly interesting so far. You're just gassy bullshit.
Do you constrain your other guests into truth or dare questions? Are you ignorant or evil? Answer honestly. And if you say the wrong answer, then you should be punished.
I've never done this before. But I knew what I was dealing with, you know? Because I always remember George Bernard Shaw's quip, you know, never get down in the mud to wrestle with a pig because you'll only get dirty and the pig will enjoy it. And well, it's in your name. So I decided to be prepared. And I put myself, you know, in a nice little plastic-proof, mud-proof suit to make sure that we stay on point.
To protect yourself.
Yes, because I don't want to get soiled by you.
A metaphorical pig. I need to ask, do you genuinely think
that you're an actual pig? But that's.
Do you think I'm an actual pig?
Yeah.
Right. If my avatar was, if I was Laser Llama, would that make you feel more secure?
No, I'd still consider you a pig.
Right.
Giggling is not going to help you.
But I'm finding this funny. I'm sorry. I mean, as much as I'm not, and I apologize that I'm not being entertaining enough to you, you're being sufficiently entertaining to me.
By the way, Chad is asking, you're gay, right?
Yes.
You're the one who sets the bar, the hairdo king that fashions are. You're fabulous. I'm fabulous. You're fabulous. Oh, I'm fabulous.
The rest of the world no longer trusts the West because of the admissions that the Minsk II agreements were to buy time to arm Ukraine, excuse me. True or false?
Sure, that's true as well.
That's true.
It's not true. It's all true. Next slide, please.
No, let's go through it. Angela Merkel and Francois Hollande, in 3 separate interviews, admitted to the fact. Interviews that were conducted over the last couple of months.
See, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I'm deliberately agreeing with you, and yet you're still arguing with me.
No, I'm just filling out the points so that the audience knows what I'm talking about specifically.
Right. Okay.
See, that's the thing. You're proving the fact that you are not ignorant. You know these facts.
And so that
you're, I'll wait for chat to catch up.
Everybody in my chat say, hey.
Militarily, the U.S. and NATO are losing the war against Russia, and I'm going to outline the argument first, and then we can discuss it so that, you know, I mean, because it's a step-by-step.
Again, with this, I would ask the question, why does Russia hold a monopoly on morality?
That's not the issue. We're talking about the military, and you're the guy who loves talking about the military stuff. You claim that you know all these weapon systems and so forth and so on, and so just looking at an overall strategy as to the conduct of the war should be a cinch for you. Is this conflict, has it devolved into attritional war? I would say that that's true. In an attritional war, conquered territory does not matter. All that matters is annihilating the opposing army's forces. Is that true or false?
Holy shit.
Holy shit, what?
You actually said it. Someone said it. I'm sorry, this is a first for me. I've never ever seen anyone on the pro-Russian side state that conquered territory does not matter. Because in the start of this war, that was the only thing that mattered.
No, at the start of this war,
that was the only thing that mattered. I could go back and I could read your tweets, and I've seen them. I've seen what you said.
Well, my opinion has changed.
But when Russia was having teams driving around in civilian cars and ambulances trying to find Zelensky, and when they
I was in Kiev. That's not accurate. I was in Kiev at the start of the war. That's just not accurate.
Okay. So all the pictures and everything that we have of that, those were all falsified.
3 blocks away. I was literally 3 blocks away from the presidential palace in Kiev. I can say unequivocally that that's just bullshit.
He wasn't at the presidential palace, though.
I don't need to have been there to have known. I had a lot of people in contact with a lot of people, a lot of press people. And that was just an outright fabrication.
Okay. So it's
so they don't fabricate stuff like the ghost of Kiev. Oh, how many planes did he shoot down last week? Like 30.
Ghost of Kiev, dude. They admitted he was a fabrication like last year, like in March. That was not a product of the Zelensky government. That was a product of Noncredibledefense, a subreddit. They made him up, and then the propaganda department, which there is one, obviously, of Ukraine, ran with it, and then finally admitted, no, it's not true.
Okay, so anyway, to get back to this point, which is much more serious than Ghost of Kiev bullshit, whoever was the source of it, or whoever inflamed it, or put a megaphone to it, irrespective of that, we can agree that this is an attritional war. An attritional war, what matters is annihilating the opposing army's forces. We can agree that U.S. and NATO does not have the industrial capacity to replenish Zelensky regime losses on the battlefield.
I would agree that if it hasn't devolved into an attritional war, it is going to, because all wars eventually turn into attritional
war. I mean, that's the whole point of Bakhmut, right?
I would say that in all wars, conquered territory does not matter, and America should have learned this in Vietnam, and it did not.
Well, they should have learned it from the Civil War. The American Civil War was an attritional war, and in fact, the Confederacy won the last couple of battles before Appomattox. Appomattox. I can never pronounce that goddamn word.
My dude, please. People want me to cover the American Civil War all the time. They always want me to make videos about it. It is two massive armies chasing each other around a country, and it is most boring civil war.
So
I would argue that all that matters is annihilating an opposing army's forces is not really true. I mean, it was a huge part of not so much annihilating, but it was a huge part of the Second World War, of the tactic commonly misclaimed as blitzkrieg, used by the Germans, especially very effectively in France, which was not to annihilate the opposing army's forces, but to surround and cut them off.
Yeah, the maneuver warfare.
Like prevent them from being able to move, prevent them from being able to fight, prevent them from being effective, cut off their supply lines. That
maneuver warfare.
Maneuver warfare. Yes, well done. Gold star. Apparently, New Atlas is here.
I feel so much better. What? I beg your pardon?
New Atlas is here. I took the gold star off him, so I'm going to give it to you. Well done. What else was your point? I'm sorry.
That the U.S. and NATO does not have the industrial capacity to replenish the Zelensky regime losses on the battlefield.
I would disagree.
The United States has just admitted that they can only produce 15,000 artillery shells per month, and the current rate of the Zelensky regime forces, not the Russians. The Russians are shelling at 20,000 per day, whereas the Zelensky regime can only manage about 7,000 artillery rounds per day. 7,000 artillery rounds is what? 210,000 a month. And the current rate of attrition, the current rate of U.S. production of artillery is 15,000 rounds per month. Shit. Chat, help me out here. What's 210 divided by 15? Like 15 as well? So basically, the Zelensky regime is using up equipment at 15 times the rate of production.
Yes.
Of the American production, and the Americans are the only ones who are producing artillery shells in large numbers.
No, they're not.
Oh, really?
Europe actually produces more artillery shells than America, and the Pacific nations even more.
Okay.
South Korea is giving rounds to Ukraine, and they have about 4 million rounds.
North Korea?
South Korea. Sorry, did I say North?
Yes, you did.
My apologies. That's the wine talking. South Korea. They have about 4 million rounds stockpiled. Now, they probably won't give all 4 million to Ukraine, but on the Russian side, they've gone from using 60,000 rounds a month to 5,000 rounds. They've almost completely run out of. I think they have run out of 122 millimeter shells, which is why they are.
Why are they, blitzing? Well, that's a wrong word, but you know what I mean. The
why are they still using artillery? Well, they've got 155 millimeter artillery, and they're converting more 122s to 155, so they have access. So
basically, you don't want to touch the issue of whether NATO has the industrial capacity or not. Alex Vashinin said that the United States simply does not. The United States and NATO, United States and its allies, both in Europe and the Far East, they do not have the industrial capacity and they do not have the shells. That's what Alex Vashinin said.
Well, I would disagree with Alex Vashinin.
Okay. Do you know who Alex Vashinin is?
I know exactly who he is, and that's why I'm disagreeing with him. Okay. The U.S. has 3,500 Abrams in storage. They've got 4,000 Bradleys in storage.
Oh, come on. Bradleys are basically
there's a company in Czechoslovakia.
A lightly armored Jeep. And you and I both know it. It's better to have a Hummer. At least it's quicker than a Bradley. Come on.
you're trying to distract me with Bradley talk here. So you have watched my videos.
Oh, okay.
I'm not falling for that one. But yes, there's a Czechoslovakia company that produces 100,000 artillery shells every month alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really see them running out of artillery shells. I don't really see an alliance of nations using 1.4% of its budget.
Okay. Since the Russians have more men and material, and they indisputably do, Zaluzny, the commander in chief
I do apologize. 100,000 artillery shells a year, not a month.
Okay. Since the Russians have more men and material, they will inevitably win. And this is indisputably true that the Russians currently, actually as of a month ago, they had 540,000 troops stationed in Belarus, the eastern border with Ukraine, and the southern border, the southern conquered territory, captured territory, whatever you want to call it. The Russians, so a month ago, they had 540,000, and they're still shipping in more men and gear. We can round it up to say 600,000 so far. And that's, I think, a conservative number. Whereas Zaluzny himself, the commander-in-chief of the Zelensky regime forces, admitted that they only have 200,000 troops available.
Yes, they did say that because they want because they're putting pressure on America to put boots on the ground because they want more troops.
Because they don't have them.
Well, they have them, but they don't.
They don't have them. If they're trying to get troops from NATO, that means that they don't have them. Why would they want NATO boots on the ground if they have all the troops necessary?
That's a good question there, Gonzalo. Why would a country being invaded by the so-called second most powerful military in the world want to get assistance from the most powerful military in the world? In fact, the most powerful military and military-industrial complex in human history. In all of human civilization, in fact. You know, why would they want that? I can tell you what I want. I want a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. I don't have one, and I probably couldn't get one. But if I did have one, I could get a lot done. I could make some serious socio-economic changes down here in Australia if I had access to a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. But I don't have one. I would like one, but I don't have one. Do you see how this works? I hope you do. It's a really simple concept, but I just want to make sure you get how that works. Cool. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
They're potentially exaggerating because, I mean, you need to understand the Zelensky. Oh my God, this wine. My God, the Zelensky regime, as you like to call them, claimed that it would run out of troops within about 3 months, and we're now about a year. We're just under a year into the conflict. And what's Russia doing? Well, Russia's pulling all crap out of storage, which it really shouldn't need to do. It's having to raise new divisions, which it really shouldn't need to do. It's having to do mass conscription, which again, it really shouldn't need to do. It's pulling T-62s out of storage.
You know that that's not true. They were basically reservists, the equivalent of the U.S. National Guard, the people who were called up in the mobilizations in September and into the fall. Those people were all with prior military experience.
My ex-boyfriend would disagree with
you. You and I both know it.
Okay. Yes, we do know that because that is true. It's all people with this prior military experience.
Oh, so you say that there is such a thing as truth and falsehood.
Let me finish. Let me finish. That is true. All people with ex-military experience. Remind me, military service in Russia is mandatory, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. So, like everyone within the recruitment age, everyone within Russia, potentially over the age of 21, is eligible for recruitment because they're all ex-military. Every single one of them is ex-military.
Everybody has to do their service in Russia, as I understand it. I could be wrong.
So what's the difference between mass conscription and calling up reservists in that instance? When every single male
you claim
is technically a reservist,
because you're giving a false impression that the people who have been called up are untrained, who have no idea what they're doing. They don't have even an inkling of what is the business end of a rifle. And you know that that's not true. So you're calling them conscripts to give the impression that they are untrained men who are just going to be thrown into like a horde or human waves, which is the constant talking point of NATO supporters such as yourself.
That?
No, but you're trying to give the impression of it.
I have maintained the position. I've always maintained the position that Russia does not use human wave tactics and never has.
At least you're one of the few honest in that regard. I mean, you're dishonest about a whole bunch of other shit that I think that we've shown pretty conclusively so far. But at least on that, I'll give you that you're not so totally despicably dishonest as your compatriots, confreres, comrades on the NATO side.
I will also say that human wave tactics don't work.
I will
also say that that is not out with the realm of possibility that Russia will do that.
But it is what the Zelensky regime is currently doing.
The Zelensky regime is not doing that at all.
They are throwing lives away in Bakhmut in literal human waves. There has been so many videos of that, of different units of the Zelensky regime forces being thrown without gear, without leadership, without any kind of equipment necessary to even mount a moderate defense.
And who made those videos?
Ukrainian soldiers.
No, they did not.
Yes, they did. They're all over the Telegram.
Which telegrams?
Slaviangrad.
The problem I have with Telegram is it's mostly what is used in Ukraine and Russia. They use Telegram. They don't use Skype or Instagram or Facebook or anything else. They use Telegram. But the problem is, as has been revealed multiple times, there are telegrams that are pro-Ukrainian, there are telegrams that are pro-Russian, there are telegrams that are pretending to be pro-Ukrainian and are pro-Russian. And one of the big things, one of the big problems I have in one of the big problems I have in Bakhmut, and I saw this quite recently, it is a major target of the Wagner Group, which is that wonderful private military company, as they like to call themselves, has been spent 5 months fighting there and has managed to slightly secure an old salt mine.
They're annihilating boatloads of Zelensky regime forces in these piddly little salt mines. And the Zelensky regime is making its last stand in Bakhmut practically. And they know that if Bakhmut falls, all they have left is the Kramatorsk line, which is nowhere near as well defended and fortified as the Bakhmut line was. And beyond that, it's clear sailing for the Russian armed forces all the way to the city of Dnipropetrovsk, or Dnipro, as you will to call it.
All right, me again. Look, I promise. I said to myself I wouldn't do this. I said to myself, no, I'm just gonna put the thing up unedited. But I just can't let this slide. Gonzalo Lira says that if they take Bakhmut, the entire defense in the Donbass will collapse. There's no real lines that the Ukrainians can dig in on, and that if the Russians so choose, they could advance all the way to Dnipro, on the Dnieper River. Right? Okay. So, to put that in perspective, I've got a map up for you here. I'll put it up in the edit. I just want to point this out. If you look at the terrain, there are only maybe 3 major roads and 2 rail lines that they could use to supply their advance going towards Dnipro or into the Donbass region in general, which is why Bakhmut is so important, right? And even if they do take it, if they try to launch a full-scale mechanized advance, look at the terrain they're going to have to cross. Like, it's nothing but river after river. There are so many rivers and tributaries of the Dnieper River. This area is just nothing but swamps, marshes, rivers, and farmland. Loamy farmland that it is currently in winter turning into spring shortly. Okay? So give that a thought. You're going to launch a mechanized offensive breakthrough down like 2 roads across 13 to 14 rivers through swamps, and you can't go off-road because it will either be slushy snow or mud. And you're going to attempt a mechanized advance or to push the line back a total of 110 miles. To put that in perspective, it's about 60 miles from the Belarusian border to Kyiv, and they got stopped butt cold outside Kyiv. They got thrown back in every region. And now this Russian army, after all of these losses, after all of the attrition, after all of the ammunition expenditure, after the heavy fighting, the fatigue, the lack of training for the troops, replacements, after all of this, they're going to somehow take the most heavily fortified city in the Donbass and then advance 110 miles unopposed. Look, the Russians are going to either freeze or starve to death before they get halfway to Dnipro. And that's assuming they can get there, which they can't. Dude, I want to know what this guy is inhaling, because, I mean, those cigarettes can't be normal, bro. They cannot be normal. Like, I want to pick up a copy of Clausewitz, which he obviously hasn't read. He probably can't read anyway. I want to pick it up and throw it at him. The theory of the culminating point applies to everybody. And if you can't get that through your head, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Just, oh my God.
So prolonging this conflict only serves to destroy the Ukrainian nation and people, which is what you want. I mean, we've established that.
I'm pro-Ukrainian, so no.
No, you're not, because if you were pro-Ukrainian, you'd be begging for a ceasefire and a negotiated settlement, a la Minsk II, but that ship has sailed. You're all in favor of continuing this war because you're a NATO supporter.
You're pushing this to Russia having
you
a monopoly
know the truth.
on morality.
You know the truth.
Right.
And so
again, these are
peace,
crocodile tears that you're shedding for Ukraine.
I live here, you imbecile. I've been living here since off and on. I've been coming here since 2012, living here with an address here and everything since 2016. So tell me about crocodile tears. Fuck off. I live here. These people, I see them all the time. They're friends, they're neighbors, they're people I know.
And
I see their suffering. I see their suffering, and I know that it's because of NATO supporters like yourself who are encouraging this pointless war that cannot be won by the Zelensky regime and is throwing away the flower of Ukraine youth and destroying the Ukraine nation. It's because of people like you, NATO supporters like you, who know the truth. You know that this is only going to end with the annihilation of the Ukraine nation, and you are egging them on pointlessly, needlessly, knowing the truth. And that makes you evil.
I am evil. Evil. Evil.
You're evil.
Yes. And now I'm going to draw this line in the sand. I'm evil. I am evil.
What'd you do that for?
Because I'm evil. I can't help it. Sorry.
Period.
Because I'm an evil warmonger. Therefore
yes,
war gives me a hard on.
Yes, because you're a small failure of a man who never accomplished anything in his life except his little giggling. And so you get a hard on by being on the side of the bullies, by being on the side of the despicable bullying tactics of NATO and that whole cabal. And you love it. That's the fact about you. You're a nihilist, and you're always going to be on the side of the bully. Because ultimately, your soul is black.
All the best soul is, baby.
And it's a real pleasure to be able to tell you this to your face. Of course, you don't have the balls to show your face. You don't have the balls, except anything, to sit in a small little room in the United Kingdom, far away from the conflict, whereas I am here in a place that I actually care about, and I'm seeing this pointless destruction.
You care about Ukraine.
For the ego of people like you.
You care about Ukraine.
Yes.
So do you want to join me in singing the Ukrainian national anthem then?
Let's talk about specific issues that I think actually you and I might agree on a lot of these points, but people in the West are suffering and protesting. Is that true or false?
Of course that's true.
That's
people
very
in
true.
the West are always suffering and always protesting about whatever.
Okay, all the governments in the West have the support of less than half their populations. True or false?
That I don't know.
Actually, it's true.
It's cool that we can openly say that, because we can actually publicly disagree with our governments, because guess what? We've got a democracy. It may be a liberal democracy, but it's still a democracy.
Since you love Ukraine so much, what does Ukraine think about surrendering to Putin?
I am not at liberty to answer that question.
Of course you're not, because they've been polled twice. They have been polled twice on the idea, should we surrender to Putin under the terms that he has dictated?
He hasn't dictated any terms.
He has dictated terms.
No, he hasn't. The Zelensky regime has dictated terms for negotiations.
They have. Do you know what they were?
Yeah, they were like, Russia has to get out of all of Ukraine, including Crimea, and only then will the Zelensky regime start negotiating with Russia, which is no point at all. It's basically a total bullshit in order to give the appearance that they are willing to negotiate, when in actuality they have no intention of negotiation. They want to destroy the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people for the ego of people like yourself and the warmongers of the United States and NATO. Just say that. I'd respect you more. But this wishy-washy bullshit.
You'd respect me more for agreeing with you.
Well,
that some death is worth it.
I beg your pardon?
You agree that some death is worth it then?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
You look at Russia.
No, you're lying about what I said.
You look at the war crimes that they have committed.
That it's despicable.
You look at the mass extermination.
The mass extermination. There hasn't been any mass extermination. That's a lie.
І один хвастався, а я вже сьогодні 2 зняв з вікон, каже. Снайпер хвастався, що я вже сьогодні 2, може там десь людей побачив і просто вбивав їх через вікна. В цій 9-поверхівці. Це не випадковість, це не якась там військова необхідність, це просто катування мирних жителів. І в нас просто вбивали, а там далі і катували, і люди з вбитими, зв'язаними руками ззаді застрелені були. Тобто, і це просто вбивство.
But I'm just going to say, I mean, I think I've made it very clear, but just to reiterate, I think that you're a piece of shit. I think you're a warmongering bastard who enjoys the suffering of the Ukraine nation and the Ukraine people.
I'm Scottish. Honey, I'm Scottish.
Yeah, and
level up those insults, please. Don't insult me by coming at me with this weak sauce.
Okay. Now I'm going to bid you goodbye.
Okay.
You die painfully, I hope.
Wow, Gonzalo. Just wow. Look at you go, man. What a class act. Telling someone who's been abusing alcohol just to keep up with your stupidity, someone who we know suffers from chronic depression, just telling them to go die, just wow. You're a classy guy. Good God. You really are a scumbag, aren't you? Well, let this be my formal invitation. If you want to bring someone on to play your little game, I'd be more than happy to. And I'm a so-called real Western propagandist. At least so many Russian bots in the comments tell me. And I don't play nice like LazerPig. I don't play nice. If you want someone who can yell just as loud, perhaps even louder than you can, well, you may have just met him. Slava Ukraina! Glorious spirit of Ukraine shines and lives forever. Blessed by fortune, brotherhood, we will stand up together. Like the dew before the sun, our enemies will fade. We will further rule and prosper in our promised land. We will lay our soul and body for the cherished freedom freedom, Cossack blood will raise the nation of our joyous people. For the liberty our people strive from sun and to the dawn. We will let no hostile power in our common home. Age at Dnieper and Black Sea will arm in arm rejoice, and Ukraine will see the daylight and live by fortune's choice. We will lay our soul and body